In about 10 seconds to let everybody's audio connect. All right, perfect. All right, welcome. Welcome to today's professional development series. We are so excited to have you here. It's good to see some familiar faces and some new faces as well. My name is Sara McAllister. I am the Senior Associate Director of Alumni Career and Professional Development. And Nina, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey y'all, my name's Nina. I'm the assistant director, and I will be all things tech today. So if you have any questions, if you can't hear, you can just direct message me in the chat.
Perfect. So I'm going to do a little bit of an intro about our session today. And while I'm doing that, I would love for you all to introduce yourselves in the chat and let us know where you are joining from. It's always fun to see kind of where everybody is just tuning in from. So today we are going to be talking about strategies to build your professional brand and grow your career with Sara and Daniel Heimlich. They are a father and daughter, both Tulane grads, and big fans of Tulane. Roll wave. And just really excited for their discussion and all the things that we're going to learn from them today. As you can see, this session is being recorded and will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, which Nina will put that link in the chat if you're not familiar with it. We have over 75 videos on our YouTube channel, all things career and professional development. So again, if you're not familiar with it, we encourage you to subscribe and just check out the different topics. We are going to have time for questions at the end. If you think of something during the presentation, feel free to put it in the chat if you feel like you might forget it. But like we said, we will have time at the end for more robust discussion and questions. Okay, I think that's it. So Sara and Daniel, thank you again for your time. I'm really excited for your session today. And I'd love for you both to introduce yourselves and then take us away.
Okay, I guess I'll start off. So Daniel Heimlich. I was the class of Tulane at Arts and Science. I guess they don't have the Arts and Sciences like that anymore, I don't think. But I was 87, graduated 87. Loved my experience at Tulane. Still get back to New Orleans. I was just there for our Radiators show, if anyone still knows the Radiators. So I was just back there in January. Had a great education there and have had a really successful career in marketing. I've been a chief marketing officer at a number of different companies. Blackboard is maybe one that you're familiar with. It's an education technology company. I was head of marketing for solutions at a company called Citrix, if you're familiar with GoToMeeting, as an example. And then since then, I've been a consultant to small and emerging technology companies, providing them marketing strategy. But that's kind of my full-time job. But my part-time role has always been basically doing mentorship, career mentorship, helping people with their professional development. In fact, I just wrote a book that is available on Amazon. I make a whole 25 cents, by the way, if you happen to buy a copy. So, but it really is a passion of mine to want to provide learnings about how to kind of grow your careers. Learning kind of the executive skills, frankly, that I just never really learned in school. I just kind of happened to learn them somehow on my own, and I see that a lot, even with my own kids. These things are just generally not taught in school, and this is an opportunity for me to be able to present those to a broader audience. So that's kind of really my passion. Anyway, this is Sara.
Yeah, hi everyone, I'm Sara. I graduated Tulane in 2022. I studied environmental studies and political science. And then after I graduated school, just because of having been through COVID during school and not been able to study abroad, I took a gap year-ish to travel. I did a lot of camping and backpacking here and abroad. And then when I came back, I now live in DC, and I work for a lobbying firm. The lobbying firm does a range of topics, but I am a policy analyst for their environment and climate portfolio. I also cover agriculture and transportation as part of that. And I started there in July of last year. So I've been there for about 7 or 8 months now.
Okay, so I guess with that, we'll jump right in. So, okay, So I mentioned, I wrote this book back in, it was published back in January. What we're going to focus on today are really these first four strategies, these rules, I call them. And so we'll kind of jump in, but 17 more are available. But these first four are really critical ones, and I'm really excited to be presenting these to you. So the first one is essentially the name of the session, but it's about building your professional brand. This is the first strategy. A lot of people talk about, creating a professional brand, but what does that really mean? So we're going to spend a few minutes talking about that, and most importantly, we're going to show you actually how to do it. So what it is and actually how to do it. So, each one of us, is really, really unique. We bring something very different to the table as part of a team. And you really have to think of it as that way. You don't want your brand to be like everyone else's. You want to have a unique position, if you will, in the marketplace. We're on the cusp here of March Madness. I don't think Tulane made it this year, unfortunately. But when you think about a basketball team, there's a center, there's a point guard, there's a coach. Everyone has their role to play. And you need to determine, what your role is going to be in your organization, but also more importantly for you, how you want to be thought of as part of your career. So, if you think about, Jeep versus Tesla, they all have their very specific brand. Sarah, maybe you could talk about how you see the brands of each of these cars.
Yeah, well, I always say that I'm gonna get a Jeep one day, and that's primarily because I know it's like an outdoorsy car. It's like rugged, it's for off-roading, and then Tesla, it's like fast, sleek, and cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, these, we all know these brands. By the way, they're both cars. They both can get you from point A to point B. They're equally good. They're just different and unique. And that's kind of what you want to think of yourself also, is what is your brand going to be in the marketplace? So, your brand is really about, how you're perceived. And it's important to note, by the way, I know when we talk about brand and personal brand or professional brand, even people these days are talking about, social media, and they're thinking about what their brand is going to be like on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. We're not really talking about that at all. If anything, those things might be supporting your brand. But the idea here is really about, what is your brand going to be? What is your perception going to be in the marketplace and among your peers?
Yeah, and that's probably going to be different than what your brand is to your friends or to your social media followers, like you were saying.
So a good way to think about this is that, how do you want, if you really kind of step back and try to remove yourself and try to think of yourself, not from you, but from the point of others, how would you want your bosses and peers to describe you in private? If you were to walk outside the room, how would they describe you? Would they describe you as someone being, a go-getter? Would they describe you as, hey, that person's always late? By the way, we all have a brand, whether you like it or not. You're going to have a brand. So the idea that we're talking about here is really about cultivating and creating that brand in a very purposeful way. So to capture that brand, again, thinking about, what would I want my bosses and peers to say about me, or what would I want, my colleagues, how would I want them to perceive me and think about me? How do you create that, in 3 words or phrases? So this is an exercise for you. Don't take a lot of time on to do it now, but I'll bet you in a few minutes, you could probably come up with this yourself. If you were to do it for me, when I put this together, and I did this years ago, for me, it was about being a creative marketer. So not just any type of marketer, but a creative marketer, a problem solver, and someone that's always reliable. And I spent a lot of time on focusing on this. This is very important to me. It's core to who I am. It's how I want others to perceive me in a professional setting. So Sarah, how would you maybe describe your brand?
Yeah, so I think one of the important things to note here is that like a lot of the brand words seem like they're going to be like intuitive. Of course, you want to be like reliable and what was yours, like creative marketer. Yeah. And if you're in,
it's kind of generic there, right?
Yeah, that's a bit generic. So it's kind of about like picking the right words for you. And I like to think of it as going back, and I don't know if like people are in their early career like I am. It might be a matter of looking back at things you've accomplished and things you were involved in, maybe in school or in your first job, and kind of stringing together the strengths that you already have. So for me, I took on a lot of leadership roles in school. I tried to be really proactive, and obviously I was involved in environmental stuff. So mine is, and not all of us have a dad who's telling us freshman year of college that they should create a brand. So I had the advantage of being able to kind of like cultivate that early on. But I would say my brand is like a doer, a leader, and an environmental advocate. And so now going forward, after having like come up with those words, I kind of cater like my resume to come back to those 3 words. And then going forward, that's also what I want people to be saying about me.
One thing I remember about that is when you actually went to interview for your recent opportunity, 8 months ago or so, when you were looking for your job, one of the things we talked about was, you were asking me, well, what should I talk about? How should I, how should I answer the questions? And what you were able to do is really formulate your responses around those 3 ideas, that you're a doer, you're a leader, and an environmental advocate. So literally, you are continuously reinforcing those 3 ideas, regardless of any question that was being thrown at you.
Yeah, definitely.
So, so again, you want to be looking at reinforcing your brand at every step. Really take the time to do this. It's not going to take you a long time. And honestly, it's going to be a chief driver for you and actually how you're going to propel yourself through your career. And whether or not you're looking for the next job, but even in your current setting, but you want to be reinforcing that through your conversations, your interviews, your dialogues, your presentations, both with your superiors, but as well as your colleagues and people that might work for you. You want to reinforce that through things that you're writing. If you're doing blogs, yes, even social media, especially professional social media like LinkedIn, you want to be reinforcing that through your presentations. So this is your brand. Again, think about Tesla. They're very consistent in everything they're doing, regardless as to where you're seeing them, in the look of the car, in their showrooms, in their advertisements. There's a consistency there. You should be doing the same thing for your professional brand.
And I think this is also a good time for like people talk about the importance of mentors. This is a good time to kind of like turn to your mentor who might know you on both like a professional and semi-personal level, and they can kind of help you come up with what those words are based on what they see from the outside.
So our next strategy is around give them what they need, not what they want. What they need, not what they want. I know this is a favorite of Sarah's, so I'll actually let her explain.
Yeah, I like to come home from work and tell him about the ways that I've employed his rules. And so this one is really like, if you think about someone asking you to do something, normally they haven't actually thought through what that really means. That's why they're asking you to do it, and that's why they're not doing it themselves. And so your job is to give them what they're actually needing and not necessarily what they're explicitly asking you for.
So not necessarily what they want, but what they need.
Yeah.
So let me try to kind of bring this home for you a little bit more. So imagine this is your boss, okay? So your boss is, Sarah didn't want to do the voice, so I'm actually going to have to do it. Our revenue has been in the toilet since October. So I think it's because we're losing sales to Ziggy, that new competitor with the polka dot box. Now I want you, this boss is, you're having this conversation with the boss. They're telling you, I want you to go to Walgreens and buy me a box of Ziggies. I need to see this polka dot thing for myself. So what does your boss want and what does your boss need? Okay. So what your boss wants, what they're really asking for is they want a box of Ziggies. That's what they've asked you for. Now, by the way, remember, your boss is busy. Frankly, they had 10 things on their plate, and this is just something that crossed their desk, and they're thinking about the revenue. Maybe their boss, maybe the board of directors was asking about it. So suddenly, this is top of mind for them, but it hasn't been really thought through. So the first thing they could think of is, oh, maybe it's the competitor, the Ziggy product. I want you to go out and get me a box of Ziggies. I want to take a look at it. That was what the direction was. But does that actually really? And yes, if you come back with the Ziggy and you hand it to them, you delivered what they wanted. But is that really what they needed? Is that what that boss needed? She herself didn't necessarily think about what she needed. It's your job to think about what she was really going after and what she needed. And that was really to fix the revenue problem. Remember that she was trying to fix the revenue problem. So what is it? What are some things that you might be able to do in order to kind of address the revenue problem? What would you think, Sarah?
You might want to like run some analyses to see if there are other competitors on the market. You might want to see if there's like something going on with the sales team. It might not be this exact competitor. That just might be the first thing that crossed their mind.
So, I mean, so imagine if you were, they asked you for a box, they're expecting you to hand them this, this box of Ziggies. And you come back not just with the box of Ziggies.
I was gonna say, you probably also want to bring them the box.
Bring the Ziggies, bring the Ziggies.
They did say that.
They did. So bring that back. So that's the expectation, right? That they would bring back, the expectation was that you're going to bring them back a box of Ziggies. So that was important. But imagine also with that Ziggy, say, hey, I did some additional analysis on this. This is what the report be. Oh, by the way, it's not just Ziggy that we should be concerned about. It's Widgy, it's Gidgy, it's Nidgy, it's these 5 other products. Here's an analysis and a side-by-side comparison. And by the way, outside of these competitors, I've noticed that there are these other things. I did an interview of some of the salespeople, and I discovered something that you should be aware of. So imagine you brought all that back. Now you're addressing what they need, not what they want. So you think that's going to help your brand?
I think so.
Okay. So when you give folks what they need or what they need, you're really addressing the problem, okay? You're providing high value. You're building your brand. You're fast-tracking constantly, you're fast-tracking your career. And honestly, if you're not doing these things, you're just doing the job that's been asked of you, you're a commodity. You're just being a commodity, and anyone can do that. And, I hate to say it, but, even artificial intelligence now is starting to do things that people want. It used to be in the old days, believe it or not, when I started my career, if I wanted to get a phone number, I had to call 411. I can just go to Google now. Google's a tool for me that makes things really easy. In the future, I want to do a quick analysis, or I want a quick thing written exactly as I want it. I just can go on AI. Artificial intelligence is going to do the things people want. So if you want to be a commodity, just do what people want. If you really want to add value and really grow your career and build your brand, think about what folks need.
Yeah, and it's going to give you a way to stand out as well. So like when I think back, so I work at this lobbying firm. I do a lot of congressional research and legislative research. And a couple of weeks ago, one of the lobbyists that I work with had asked me if I could pull the zip codes for like factories that our clients worked in. And having been there for a few months, I know that he doesn't really care actually about just the zip codes, but that's what he literally asked me for. What I knew is that he would want the zip codes to figure out what districts those factories were in, so that I could then probably give him a list of representatives for that area, members like senators for that area. And so thinking ahead to that, I created a spreadsheet, and instead of just having a list of the zip codes, I provided him with all that information, which he may not have actually thought about because the client may have asked him for the zip codes, but he was able to then reflect well on himself and give the client way more information than they had asked for, and he had really appreciated that.
That's a perfect example. So the next strategy we're going to talk about is what I call expectations and communications. And actually, we talk a little bit about it in the Ziggy product. The boss asked for Ziggy. They asked you to go out and get it. They may have asked you, hey, can you get it? I need it this afternoon. That was an expectation that was created, right? So that's what I mean by an expectation. When you think about it, especially, this is even true a lot in in your personal life. Your personal life obviously is more emotional connections and discussions. But when you think about things in a work environment, there really is a transactional interaction that happens in these conversations. And frequently there's going to be some kind of action, or there should be, frankly. Every meeting that you go to and do, what's the purpose of that? There should be an action that comes out of that. And essentially, it's a social contract that is an expectation for someone to actually get something done, to deliver something. to bring a certain type of deliverable. There maybe is a scope of work that's been described. It might be something small, it might be something larger, it might be done by a certain time. But again, there's almost this social contract that's been created, and that is really what the expectation is about. I was actually trying to think about it last night. I almost find a hard time almost not having an expectation coming out of some business conversation interaction. Again, that could be with your boss, that could be with a colleague, it could be with a client, a customer, a partner, whatever. But it's always happening all the time. And again, be conscious of that idea of actually having these expectations that are constantly occurring and making sure if you're meeting them. So once those expectations have been created, you need to be communicating them. The last thing you want to be doing is you set an expectation and then you surprise someone by not delivering the expectation. Going back, imagine the boss asks for you to run down to get the box of Ziggies, and you go downstairs, you go to the Walgreens, but you don't show up with the box that evening. Maybe you even got it. Maybe you actually did what she asked, but you actually didn't communicate it, that you actually weren't going to give it to her the next day. Well, you're creating anxiety for your boss or your customer or your client or your colleague because they don't know what the heck's going on. You need to be communicating those expectations constantly. So as soon as an expectation has been created, my suggestion to you, if it's a verbal expectation, go back to your desk or you're on your phone, type up a quick note, really short. Hey, here's what we talked about. Here's what I promised to deliver. I'm going to have it to you by Friday, or whatever, or you promised you're going to do such and such by such a date. Then constantly be providing updates. If things change, let them know, reminders, but you want to be constantly communicating and making sure that, hey, they know you're on top of this. If they know you're on top of that, what is that good for, Sarah?
It's good for your brand.
And so, again, communication is crucial and goes hand in hand with the idea of expectations. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, and also I think that especially this reminders part, this is also a way to kind of like manage up as well. So like when I'm on a meeting, it's normally I'm the lowest level person on that meeting. And I make a note of when I send my meeting notes back to my higher ups. My system is I like to highlight everybody's name who is in charge of doing something. And then sometimes before the next meeting, I'll send those notes back so that they have another reminder of what they have to do. And so I think that's also a way. It doesn't have to just be like, it can be a two-way street on this one. And I also always think about when I was interviewing for this job, one of the questions that was asked of me, that was kind of stumped me for a second, but I think I did answer it correctly, was that they asked, is it better to turn in a assignment on time but incomplete, or is it better to turn in a complete assignment but late? And the correct answer on this is that you're not supposed to do either. And the way that you can not do either is by communicating beforehand, so that if it's maybe a project that you didn't realize was going to take as much time as it is, maybe make sure you just start communicating that with your manager or your teammates so that they know what's going on and they can make the determination, or you can recommend what the determination should be, whether you think it would be better to move up the deadline or whatever it may be. And then another thing is that it's really been drilled into me, especially in my current role, that you always want to, what they call, close the loop. So when someone emails you, and even if it's just a really small thing, like, could you get me the number of this person, or or a bigger project, like, could you get me this research project? Even if I'm in the middle of something, I like to just make a habit of responding to that email within like 5 minutes of when they sent it to me, which seems aggressive, but you don't actually need to have done anything. You can just say, hey, got your note. And then if you have more information on it, you could say like, I'll get this to you by this time, or I'm working on this right now. People I have found that appreciate over communication than under communication.
I knew also that, in your work, you're actually supporting, in some cases, multiple partners in the business.
Yeah.
So you might actually you're working on something for one partner, you have a deliverable, you've made a commitment and expectation for them. Now someone else jumps in with something that's even a higher priority.
Yeah.
Now, this other person, now they don't know about this other thing happening. So how do you manage that? How, suddenly now you can't, then it's okay. Sometimes you can't always deliver on what the expectation was, but what do you want to do?
Yeah, well, I think it's good also, that's a point where you can like do some self-reflection and start to understand your limits of what you can do, so that when you're asked to do a task, you know whether or not you're actually going to be able to get it done within a reasonable or the asked period of time, and set up that expectation in the beginning that, hey, I have this other really big project that I'm working on, and I know I'm not going to be able to turn this into you until this time. Another thing is I really like to, instead of coming to my teammates with just a problem, I like to try to think forward about the solution to that problem, which I guess probably leads into the next rule. But I like to say, if I can't get this done on this certain time, and I know that, I like to then email them back and say like, hey, I can either get this to you by tomorrow at close of business, or if you need it done today, I've already looped in Daniel, and he's willing to help me on this project. So you're giving them a solution without posing them a problem.
Right, you've actually reset the expectation.
Yeah.
That's actually what you've done. So again, expectations, sometimes they do move. And I can't reinforce this enough, because when I have managed large teams, the thing that would bother me the most is that, if I gave someone an assignment to do something, for me, it was off my desk. It was being handled. I didn't have to worry about it anymore. That's what people expect from you when they give you that assignment. And when I get someone coming to me at the 11th hour saying, I'm sorry, it's not going to get done, that is the thing, honestly, that would bother me the most.
Ruins your brand.
And it actually, it's right. It actually doesn't hurt the person's brand, but actually hurt my brand,
Yeah.
because my brand is also dependent on that deliverable. So as soon as you know that things aren't going your way, again, you want to send an update, you want to change, you want to reset the expectation. You want to do it as soon as possible. Things are going to change. So it doesn't mean that every time you set an expectation, that's set in stone. No, it just means that, things do happen, and you want to make sure that you're communicating and resetting things as rapidly as you can. And people can know that not only that you actually deliver, but that when things are not quite right, that you're communicating and they always know what's going on. So expectations are also your power. Most of you at this point in your careers, maybe you're not managing teams, do not actually have direct responsibility, where people actually are on the organizational chart reporting to you. But more than likely, you're collaborating with people and you're working as part of work groups. So expectations are huge. It's a great tool in your bag for actually managing others, even if they're not actually direct reports to you.
That's what I was kind of saying about managing up, is like being the help that person maybe didn't necessarily ask for, but probably what they need.
Exactly. So think of it. I mean, think of it that expectation. It's like a social contract. So imagine if you're in a meeting, and Joe across the room says, "Okay, listen, Joe, I need you to." Again, he doesn't report to you. He works on another team. So you said you're going to actually get the Acme report to us by tomorrow. Well, Joe says, I can't get it to you by tomorrow, but I can actually have it to you by Friday. Okay, great. So you'll have it to me by Friday? Yes, expectation has been set. Now what I want to do is I want to go back. I want to communicate in an email to Joe saying, hey, Joe, thanks. I'm looking forward to seeing that presentation on Acme on Friday. I'll look for it then. By the way, everyone else in the room also hears that. Everyone else is maybe copied on the email potentially. So this puts a lot of, frankly, pressure on Joe because his brand is at stake. He needs to deliver. Everyone wants to meet the expectation. So you're reinforcing that expectation actually by actually creating some level of group pressure to actually get that done. And frankly, most people want to deliver. They want to do what they say. They want to be truthful about that. They have good intent. So more than likely, Joe's going to deliver by actually creating that. If Joe and especially for some employees, if you just promise that, you don't communicate it, you just kind of let it go, you forget about it, it might not get done, and Joe knows he's going to be able to get away with it next time. So, again, great, make sure that at the end of every meeting, and I'm sure a lot of you already do this, is that just don't ask for actions to happen. You need to know when is it going to be delivered. What is the timeline? Okay, you're going to do this by this date. Again, it's your social contract. Again, when that happens publicly, again, you're not trying to embarrass anyone. All you're trying to do is get them to commit to you and essentially to the team that their part is going to get done. Multiple members on the team, by the way, probably have commitments to get done on the team. So, actually, now that I think about it, I'm gonna actually make Sarah, see if I can get her to make a commitment right now. Sarah, Mom and I are gonna be going out to dinner tonight. Can I get you to maybe commit to go to dinner with us tonight?
I'm gonna set the expectation
Okay.
here.
So,
We'll see.
all right. So, all right, failure on that one. But I think you guys know what I mean. All right. Final strategy, what we're going to be talking about today, and then we're going to take some questions and answers. But the last one, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this one. I'm sure everyone is already familiar with it, but you want to be proactive. You want to get ahead of the curve. You don't want to just wait for, and we talked a lot about these things, touching on these things throughout this presentation so far. But you want to look for opportunities to make a difference. One of the main ways that I was able to grow my career was not, doing kind of the job that I was asked to do, but actually looking for opportunities and actually doing the job, frankly, that I really wanted to be my job. I wasn't asked that to be my job, but I started doing that job. I actually worked when I used to work in printing, I was in sales. And you know what? I actually, in the evenings, I would go back and spend extra time going and actually working on the printing presses because I want to understand every element of how the printing works. It would make me a better salesperson. I was able to be more proactive. I was able to understand how those projects came together, mechanically, more technically. And you want to look for other types of ways. I mean, maybe Sarah, maybe you have a story or something to share here.
Yeah, I had shared how ways that I've been proactive since it does weave into those other rules. But like one of the things when I moved into this newer role that I have now, is I had noticed like my team sending clients links to relevant news articles that they might be interested in or flagging funding opportunities for them. And while those links were really helpful, I'm sure, to the clients, I kind of realized that maybe those people don't have all the time to read through that article because none of us have enough time in our day to do that. And so one of the things that I just kind of took it upon myself to do was make a habit of checking all the news. I know this is kind of specific to my job, but checking specific news sites, monitoring funding opportunities on behalf of the clients, and then not only sending the link, but distilling the article into a few bullet points so that they can tell right away whether or not that's something that they're interested in. And then that goes really far because people will notice that you've gone farther than what you've been asked to do, and you've done something that is quite helpful to them.
So again, don't wait for things to happen, make them happen. If you're waiting for things to happen, you're just doing what people are asking you to do, you're a commodity. I wouldn't have said this even a year ago, but AI is coming fast. It's going to actually be addressing a lot of these kind of lower level, even knowledge tasks, remarkably. These things are going to get automated. But more importantly than that, don't run scared from that because there's so many opportunities here, but you need to distinguish yourself. You need to differentiate yourself. You need to be proactive. You need to do a good job setting communications, setting expectations, communicating those. So this is kind of the recap here is that, again, you want to be purposeful about building your professional brand. Take the time, think about the 3 words or phrases that really are how you want people to think about you in the professional world, but also what your vision is for yourself as to where you want to go. So your brand, by the way, could evolve. You're not stuck in that brand forever. You want to evolve that and grow that, but you want to be purposeful about that. In fact, you can think about what your brand is today and actually use that as a tool to compare that to where you want to be in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. I would actually, especially at your stage of careers, as I understand most of the people are on this call, I would definitely encourage you to do that. Number 2, give people what they need, not what they want. They haven't even thought through what they need. As a consultant to my clients are asking me all the time, hey, I need this. But, imagine like, a doctor, if you went to the doctor and you said, hey, doctor, I have a headache. I need you to prescribe me, extra strength Tylenol. No good doctor would do that. What would they do? They would actually dive into the problem, try to understand, okay, what else is going on? Are you having stomach pains? How's your vision? They would actually try to really diagnose the issue and not just give me what I wanted, okay, because I'm not a doctor. I thought that might be what I wanted, but what I needed might have been something completely different. What that doctor needs to prescribe as a professional. You need to be the professional. You need to understand and diagnose what the issues are and then prescribe the right solution based on what they actually need, not what they want. Number 3 is we talked about expectations and communications. So you want to do an expectation. It's happening, remember, constantly. Almost in every type of work interaction that you're having, there's an expectation that's being set. It's a social contract. You want to make sure, first of all, that you're meeting the expectations that you promise. And you should be meeting those most of the time. I know we talked about, making sure you're communicate. And of course, you want to communicate things when things go wrong, which they sometimes will. But you also want to have a brand that you deliver things that you promise. So make sure those expectations are realistic. They're things you can mostly deliver against, and that you're communicating when things are changing, when you've agreed to something. And also you're actually using that to help manage others, whether or not they work for you directly, to be able to actually use that as your power to actually manage expectations and drive results through others using expectations. And then last but not least, you need to be proactive in everything you're doing. You can't be a commodity. AI is coming along. Again, it's not something to be scary about. It's something to leverage and use as a tool. But you don't want to be what AI can replace. You need to be adding extra value. You need to be being proactive. You need to be thinking beyond what your bosses are thinking. And ultimately, how can you improve the state of your organization and thinking like an owner in your organization to be able to do that. Again, I only make 25 cents on a book. Believe me, this is my passion. I really feel strongly about these ideas. There's actually 21 of these strategies that are part of my book. You could find it on Amazon. Sometimes I find that if you actually Google my name, if you go on Amazon and look up Daniel Heimlich, it might even be a faster way to find the book, but it's Make Your Success, the 21 Rules for Young Professionals. You can find that on Amazon or any of the other booksellers online.
Say it's not a thick book. My dad tries to give me these the really thick business books. I'm not going to read that. It's just not going to happen. But he has distilled it very well in this, and I think it honestly has really helped me build my career, especially having come off of a gap year and having to leverage that in interviews.
Oh, I appreciate that. So anyway, here we are. We're ready to hope that was helpful, and we're ready to take any of your questions.
Daniel and Sarah, thank you so much for this. I know I've learned a lot. I actually came up with a couple questions while people are thinking of their own. Sarah, this is something that you said early on in terms of when you were talking about the your brand, and you mentioned mentors. And this is a topic that comes up a lot in conversations around professional development. And I'd love to hear from both of you, particularly Sarah, in the beginning of, how did you find your mentors? And what advice do you have for young professionals who are having a hard time finding that first mentor for them?
Yeah, I think that definitely can be.
No, go ahead.
That can be really difficult. I think in the beginning I was pretty aggressive after having come back from my gap year, in that I was honestly leveraging Tulane's network a lot. I know there's kind of like a LinkedIn feature. I'm not going to be able to walk through exactly right now how to do that, but I'm sure you guys have resources on how to do that. But finding people through LinkedIn who work in the industry that you like, and just cold messaging them on LinkedIn, it feels really awkward. I try to figure out what their email might be and cold email them as well. What I have found is people really do want to help other Tulaneans, and people also want to just help younger people in their industry. My dad was always saying, when you're young in your career, people who are older than you and more established, they're looking for ways to help young people, and that might eventually dissipate once you're a bit further into your career, and it might seem whether or not you actually mean it, it might seem like you're just trying to further your career. And so cold emailing, trying to meet people in person, it's intimidating, but I definitely feel like you can connect a lot more when you meet people in person. And then once yeah, I think those are the main things. I know it can be definitely a bit awkward at first, but after that, just kind of keeping people in the loop. I know my dad sends out like a newsletter to people who have kind of mentored him throughout the years, just like giving them updates on like when you get a new job, when you get a new promotion. Keeping them in the loop, even when you don't actively need them, will make people feel like they're still relevant to your life. And when you actually do need advice from them, they'll be a lot more willing to pick up the phone and hear what you have to say.
That's great. Yeah, I think Sarah pretty much covered it all. It's pretty much what I would say. The one thing I would reinforce is that number one is, again, be proactive. Don't wait for these things to happen. Don't wait for it to fall in your lap. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you are on this call. You're not those people. But don't be afraid to reach out. Like Sarah said, old guys like me, and older ladies and professionals, we had people, we got to our stage of our career because we had people that helped us. People that are at my stage of a career, we want to leave a legacy. We want to actually help others. So yeah, the Tulane network is a great way to do it. But not just there, through your friends. You don't know who people know. And again, don't be afraid to reach out to them and let them know exactly what you're asking for. Honestly, it's much more difficult. It's much easier to do it at your stage of the career right now. Hey, I'm early in my career. I noticed that you're the head of, Exxon's, mobile division. By the way, you can go to the top brass of these organizations. I promise you, even CEOs. I mean, obviously not all of them. Some of these top level people, if you actually reach out to them, they will actually respond to you, and you let them know and be honest and sincere about that. Don't go asking them, by the way, when you're on a call for a job. Don't ask them for an internship. Ask them for their true advice. Ask them how they got to their career. How do they propel themselves? What advice would they give to you? Be sincere about that. Be really, come do that in a very sincere way, in a truthful way. You may or may not get you may get an opportunity out of that, but that shouldn't be your chief reason to do it. And I promise you, yeah, you're going to get some people turning you down, but take this path and actually make a huge difference for you to get the right mentorship. Don't wait for, don't just like fall into someone that's willing to talk to you. Find the right mentor for you and actually actively reach out to that person.
Oh, that's great advice. I also, a lot of the alums that are reaching out to our office for individual career coaching are typically either looking to pivot to a completely different career or are experiencing some type of layoff and are trying to figure out, what to do next. Thinking about just today's topic and especially those kind of first 4 rules, what general advice do you have for individuals who are in those 2 camps?
So what I would recommend to them is, number one is think about their brand. I think is really an important one. So I actually would, I gave the suggestion that think about what your brand is. So I would actually go back and think, okay, if I had my boss, I had my direct reports, I had a few colleagues, some partners, and I put them in a room together and they were to talk among each other, what would be the 3 words or phrases that they would come up with that describe me? And I would kind of really go mentally and try to separate myself from that and think about what they would say and really be honest about that with myself. The next thing I would do is think about, okay, is that something I want to build on and take with me to my next role, or do I want to actually look for my next thing? And I would think about the brand that I want to create. Generally speaking, if you're looking to make a pivot, you want to actually be able to, you just can't you can't go from being a financial analyst and suddenly you want to be a musical rock star. Those don't equate. You need to figure out ways that you could evolve. So maybe it's through the industry. It could be in the industry. But the other thing I would also suggest is not just looking at your experience, but actually looking at the skill set, which is most important. Actually, I do talk about this in a chapter in the book. Is you want to actually look at the skills and traits of what you bring and focus on those as opposed to direct experience. Your skills might be directly correlative correlative to another opportunity that would fit perfectly, even though you don't necessarily have that particular experience. So those are some of the things I would suggest. You're welcome to ask me a follow-up to that. I hope I captured what you were asking for.
Yes, you did capture it. I do have a follow-up. I guess maybe I'm being a bit too specific, but it also has become a theme around the kind of layoffs recently is, someone who, I guess I'm thinking again about the first rule, the professional brand, and someone who's just having a really hard time kind of bouncing back, right? Are there any, and I guess too, for you, Sarah, like when you were first, I mean, I know you have a dad who kind of instilled this in you, thinking about that first time that you were trying to develop that professional brand, what did that look like for you? Because I sometimes I have people are just like, I don't know what I want. I don't know who I am. Like, how do we help them?
I think one of the things that could be like a good exercise would be take like those top line things that you would put on your resume, add a few more things that maybe you wouldn't put on like your professional resume, but just like experiences you've had. Like, a lot of people will use like being in the service industry, like being a waiter, something like that. I feel like that's a pretty classic example. And then under that, maybe like make some bullets of skills that you honed in on while you were doing that experience, and also things that you liked while you were doing that experience. So for example, like at Tulane, I was a leader for the Outdoor Adventures Recreation Center. That's not really like something that can directly equate to working at a lobbying firm or working in policy. But if I were to put bullets under what skills I really not just would have liked to have in those roles, but actually did have and was able to cultivate in that role, it probably would have been like organization. I had a lot of organization, a lot of moving parts to coordinating like food and trip logistics and safety and all these different things. So kind of like organization and coordination would be like a bullet point under that. And then the next one might be like a leader. I mean, like I was literally leading these trips, figure out some more like character traits that go under that. And I think if you did that for every single role, professional or non-professional, or opportunity, or volunteer job or extracurricular activity that you did, you'll be able to find a pattern in which you'll have had similar qualities in each of those positions. And that will be able to help you narrow down what the brand actually was.
Yeah. I think that's good. That's good advice. One thing I will add to that, I'm thinking more about your question, Sarah, is that the thing I would say is you need to get out of your own head. So yes, you should go through all this analysis and do that for yourself, but you also need to, I'm a marketer. We always like to say marketers, nothing ever happens just in alone in the office here. I got to go out and talk to the market. I have to see what's going on. So number one is, first of all, just mentally, you need to get out. You need to be engaging with other people, because obviously when you're laid off and things happen like that, it's a blow. I've been through it myself. It's a blow. And, you need to get out there. You need to be engaging with people. You need to be reminded, frankly, a little bit as to what you bring to the table. And others that you've worked with can remind you of that. But in doing that, again, you want to network. And again, you don't want to be networking just asking for a job. Because guess what? If you're networking and just asking people, hey, I'm thinking about making this career change. I'm thinking about pivoting my career to this. What do you think? How would you maybe go about this? Are there other people that you would suggest that I could speak with, as opposed to, hey, do you know where I can find a job doing this? You're going to scare people off like that. If you're qualified for something and you're just asking for advice, guess what? People are naturally going to suggest you for the job. But I would think of that not as like, you're not trying to, that's not like a side tactic. That is something that just will naturally happen. Again, be authentic. Go to them, asking them for their advice. Ask them, based on your experience, where do they see maybe in their industry? Maybe they're in another industry. Reach out to people in the way that we've been talking about through LinkedIn. Now, especially someone like me that's more advanced in their careers, I've touched a lot more people than Sarah has over many years. So, but the way also, what I would suggest to you is, before you get into that situation, is, as Sarah pointed out, make sure you're working your network all along. The time that, listen, if you've lost your job, yes, reach out to your network, but you're going to be in a much better position if you actually kept in touch with that network. You've offered to help them along the way. So, it's a congenial situation. And I'm very purposeful about it. I have a list of people that are kind of what I consider kind of my A group of people that I want to just be in regular touch with. And I take a peek at that once a month or so. And I'll shoot them an email, or if I see an article that pertains to them, or I'll just ask them how they're doing. Or actually next week, I'm getting together for a lunch with a friend of mine I haven't seen in a few months. Somewhere along the way, that might result itself into an actual opportunity, but keeping in regular touch, leveraging your network, getting out of your own head, and out there, and also taking advantage of there's, I'm sure in all of your towns, there's local networking events. I would also try to go to not just the local, you'll see there's two levels of networking events I found. There's the type of networking events where everyone's trying to sell something and everyone's looking for a job. Those are usually the free events, which is fine. But you know what? Make a little bit of an investment. Going to some of these professional events, and yeah, they might cost you $100 or a few $100s to get in there. But guess what? You've weeded away all these other people like that are just looking and just wanting something. And you're going to be in the room now with people that actually have responsibility, who actually have responsibility of hiring, that are managers of certain areas. You're learning in the field. So take the time, make investments in yourself, get out of the office, I guess, and network. Those would be my pieces of advice.
That's great. Thank you very much. So as we wind down our time, I see that you both have your emails. So is it in terms of, so anyone can, if you think of your questions or you want to contact, the emails are there. And Nina, if you want to put that into the follow-up email as well. Can people also contact you on LinkedIn?
Sure thing.
Okay. Well, we don't have any more questions. I would love for the both of you just to close us out. And thank you for your time today.
Yeah, I'll let Sarah wrap it up.
Well, I was just also going to follow up on the last question, is because I really relate to that kind of slump of like the in between coming off of college. I know mine was like a unique situation that I didn't really work for like over about a year, and then coming back and having to start that job process. And it took me, I think, like 7 months or so, six months maybe, to actually secure a job. And there was a lot of ups and downs in that, of like almost making it and then not making it. And it's extremely humbling. I think that was the only word that I could think of, because I had always thought, in college, you're kind of in this micro environment of everyone, especially at Tulane, everyone's like taking on leadership positions and really involved. And I think the getting out of your head part, I think the getting out of your head part is really important. And like, it's really simple, but finding ways to boost your confidence in all aspects of your life and not just in your professional one will also help you with your professional one. But yeah, I think just reminding myself of wrapping it all up, reminding myself of these rules throughout my weeks and my months, thinking of ways that I can be an asset past what I've already been asked to do, has definitely helped me further my career in the short time that I've been working.
One thing I just want to add, actually, I realized I set a poor expectation a little bit earlier, and I want to communicate that. So and this is something I would encourage you to do also on the networking. LinkedIn for me is like sacrosanct. So LinkedIn for me is the only people that are part of my LinkedIn are people that I actually have met, that I've actually had conversations with and I've met. So, I mean, you could choose to do this or not. I'm going to let you know how I do it really quickly. I know it's kind of like a little side point, but to me, the network is so important that literally when I go down, I have like 1,500 people in my network now. Every single one of those people, I pretty much can remember who I met, when I met them. I have a relationship with them. So, and the reason I do that is I don't want to dirty my LinkedIn up, and don't take this the wrong way. I don't want to dirty my LinkedIn up because I get requests daily for LinkedIn. I could literally have 10,000 people on my LinkedIn network, but I only had 1,500 because I keep it tight. And the reason why I do that is so I can keep in regular touch with that group of people who actually I have a relationship with. It actually means something. So actually the quick answer is that please reach out to me through email. I'm more than happy to actually communicate with you in that way. And if I could be of help to you, I'd be happy to do that. Once to get to know each other, I'm happy to have a link with you.
Thank you for that clarification. That makes a lot of sense. All right, everyone. Again, Daniel and Sarah, thank you so much for today. This was wonderful. Nina will be in everybody's inboxes later this week or next week in terms of the recording and any follow-up information. Thanks again, y'all. Have a good day.
All right,
Bye,
thank you.
all. Thank you.
Everybody.